Here's our project for today. It's like a modular placemat, so I'm calling it a mod mat. I seriously thought about calling it a plate mate. You can call it whatever you want, but I think you'll call it fun. It's made with our spot-on tool. This little tool comes packaged in this format. It opens up and it gives you not only this runner, but also these other blocks. In addition to the patterns that are included in the packaging, we also offer the Celebration of Six, Cubics, High Step and Hexie, and Petal Pizzazz. And now we have a new digital pattern. It's the Mod Mat. What I want to show you today is, yes, how to make the block, but also how to build in those borders. And I'm going to show you how to do a wrapped binding, which is especially nice for this shape. So let's get started. Here's our fabric, and I've cut strips. We've gotten out our cutting mat, our spot-on tool, and we've sewed those strips into a strip set. We're ready to cut. See the D line on the tool? We're going to place that on the seam. And now I'm going to cut these out. Here are 6 pieces. And now I'm going to cut these out. To do that, I can either turn my tool over like that, or I can turn my fabric over. I've opted to turn my fabric over. I'm starting at the other end. I'll put the line right on the seam. So here's my first cut. Let's compare it to this one. It's the mirror image. Continue cutting. Now I have my spot-on pieces. Here is my strip for cutting the tips. I use the spot-on tool rotated like this with the T1 line following the edge of the strip. And I cut triangles like this. Once those are cut, we're ready to sew those to the spot-on pairs. And let's look at 2 of these. Right sides together and sew it right here. Here we have our 2 spot-ons sewn together. Notice that I've opened up the seam. That's optional. Here it is from the front side. The next step is to add the triangle. Center the seam, match the tops, and sew across. When I sew it, I'll sew it from the back side. Keep everything straight. Here it is sewn, and you can see that I've pressed my seam allowances towards the tip, and we're ready to trim. Take your spot-on tool and place it on the T3 line, making sure the sides are even, and now I'll cut. And you can see by trimming it like that, everything is nice and even. The pin on the outside edge will help me to know where to sew my border strips. Now we're ready to make our borders. Here's my strip, and I will cut that into 8-inch pieces. Take the piece and center it to the strip and sew that on. Here it is sewn on. I'll press it with the seam allowances going towards the darker fabric, and now it's time to trim. For the right hand side, I'll trim with my spot-on tool placed along the outer edge. Now for the other side, I'll line it up with the edge and the side and trim here. I have border strips sewn to each spot-on unit. Doing it this way gives me a built-in border so that when I assemble the unit, it's bordered and ready to go. I'll sew 2 together, add a third to make a half, do the same thing with the other half, and then sew the 2 halves together. Now for wrapped binding. It's especially good for small projects like this, and hexagons are an ideal shape. I took my finished block and used it as a guide to cut out a square of backing fabric. Notice that the backing fabric is quite a bit larger than the block itself. Now I'll turn that piece over, add a piece of batting, and I'll quilt that. Trim the excess batting carefully right to the edge of the block. Okay, now that we've got it removed, we're going to measure 3/4 of an inch from the edge and cut. Once you have your backing cut all the way around, you'll take that 3/4 of an inch that extends beyond the quilted piece and fold it in half. Sometimes the fabric is resistant to that fold, so I put a little glue stick along the edge and that held it in place so I can work with it. The next step is to fold it over again. First I go around and just pin in the center. As you pin, you're looking for a consistent width for your binding. When you're ready to do the corner, look for the part where the fold is. You're going to fold it first. So it comes like this, and then this one comes up and matches it, like that. That angle should be a 60-degree and fits right in with the seam. Let's do it again. You can see the fold, the fullness is on this side, so I'm going to fold it here, and then take this and bring it up like this, so that that fold aligns with the seam, and pin it. When I start my stitching, I set my needle in one of those corners and then proceed. Okay. Now that it's all pinned, we're ready to stitch. As you stitch, be very aware of the width of that binding. If you see any inconsistencies, fix them then. It'll look much better. I hope you'll enjoy making this mod mat. It's functional yet decorative. It's modular, meaning you can move it around and take them with you. You can find the Spot On tool and our mod mat digital pattern on our website. We'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel. Then you won't miss the next tips and tricks video. Thank you and God bless.